At 75, Evelyn Winters had learned how silence could echo louder than any spoken words. Her little cottage at the end of Willowbend Lane knew her footsteps by heart. Slow, steady, and gentle, like a memory walking across polished wood. Every morning began the same. She pushed aside the floral curtains, opened the window to let in the chirping of sparrows, and looked down the narrow dirt road leading to her gate. She always paused for a moment longer than she needed to, just in case a familiar car might appear. It never did. Her children had a habit of saying things with ease, especially promises. "We'll visit someday, Mom," they would say, their voices light, distracted, already thinking about other things. Someday, such a comfortable word for people who didn't intend to do anything soon. Yet Evelyn believed them. Maybe because she wanted to. Maybe because mothers, no matter how old, still hope their children remember them. Inside her home, memories hung on walls like old companions. Photographs of her late husband, Arthur, a kind man with steady eyes, kept her company. In the kitchen, the wooden table he built for her still held the small dents from decades of family meals. She would run her fingers across them, remembering her children when they were young, their laughter, their noise, their dependence. They had once clung to her dress and begged for one more story or another cookie. Now months passed without a single knock on her door. Children grow up, neighbors often said sympathetically. They get busy. Evelyn always smiled in response. They just have their own lives. They'll come when they can. But deep inside, she felt an ache that wouldn't fade. Busy was one thing, forgetting was another. Her days were peaceful, but sometimes too quiet. She tended to her roses, read novels with frayed covers, and baked pies she often ended up gifting to neighbors because she couldn't finish them alone. She carried her loneliness gracefully, like a shawl draped around her shoulders, warm enough to live with, but never comfortable. Still she waited. Every afternoon she brewed 2 cups of tea. It started as a habit when Arthur was alive. Now it remained a ritual that brought her comfort. She would set the second cup across from her and whisper, "For company just in case." She joked about it with neighbors, but they all knew the truth. Evelyn missed people. She missed her children. She never blamed them. She told herself the world was different now, fast-paced, demanding. Yet, late at night when the clock's ticking was the only sound in the house, her heart whispered the question she refused to say aloud. If they loved me, wouldn't they come? Weeks blended into months. The seasons shifted, leaves turning gold, then falling, then returning again in green bursts. Her children sent the occasional message, short, polite, obligatory. A birthday text. A forwarded holiday greeting. Never a real conversation. Never a plan to visit. Until one spring morning, something unusual happened. Evelyn was trimming her rosebush when the phone rang, sharp, unexpected. She wiped her hands on her apron and answered, trying to calm the sudden flutter in her chest. "Mom," her daughter's voice said. Evelyn's heart warmed instantly. "Oh, sweetheart. What a nice surprise. How are you? How are the kids?" "We're fine," came the flat reply. "Listen, we're coming to see you this weekend." Evelyn froze. The pruning shears slipped from her hand and fell into the grass. They were coming? After all this time? A smile bloomed across her face, wide and trembling with emotion. "You're coming home?" she whispered. "Yes. We need to discuss something important." There was something strange in her daughter's tone, something cold. But Evelyn pushed the feeling aside. Her children were finally visiting. That was enough, more than enough. She didn't know then that this visit would change everything. And she certainly didn't know they wouldn't be coming alone. The weekend arrived with a soft drizzle, the kind that made the earth smell fresh and alive. Evelyn woke early, filled with a nervous excitement she hadn't felt in years. She polished the wooden floors, baked her children's favorite lemon bread, and set out the delicate china cups she used only on special occasions. Every small movement carried a quiet hope. They're finally coming home, she told herself. She checked the window at least a dozen times. By noon, her heart skipped when she finally saw a car approaching the gate. But as it drew closer, her smile wavered. It wasn't the familiar family SUV. This was a sleek, black vehicle, too polished, too formal. Her daughter and son stepped out, dressed in stiff, businesslike clothes instead of the comfortable outfits she remembered them in. And then she saw him. A stranger in a crisp suit carrying a briefcase. A lawyer. Her breath caught for a moment, just long enough for something inside her to twist. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped outside, forcing her joy to stay visible on her face. "Children," she said softly, opening her arms for a hug. Her daughter offered only a light, awkward embrace. Her son didn't hug her at all. He gave a tight-lipped nod instead. The lawyer stood behind them, expression neutral, as if he had practiced detachment for a living. "Mom," her son said briskly, glancing at his watch. "Can we go inside? We have a lot to discuss." The words were cold. Not warm. Not loving. Not the words of children visiting their mother after months of silence. Still, Evelyn nodded and led them into her home, trying not to notice how they didn't even compliment the food she'd prepared or the fresh flowers she'd arranged. They didn't sit at the kitchen table where they once ate meals together, laughing freely. Instead, they walked straight to the dining room, where the lawyer immediately opened his briefcase. Her daughter cleared her throat. "Mom, we're here because we're worried about you." Evelyn blinked. "Worried? About what, sweetheart?" Her daughter exchanged a glance with her brother before continuing. "You're 75 now. Living alone. This place is too much for you. We think it's best if the house is transferred, legally, to us. For your safety." Her safety? Evelyn looked around the house that had protected her for decades. She had raised children here, nursed Arthur through his illness here, survived winters and scorching summers here. The house had never failed her. Her son slid a stack of papers across the table. "It's just a simple transfer. You'll still live here for now, but we'll handle decisions, bills, maintenance, everything." "And you brought a lawyer?" Evelyn whispered. The lawyer gave a professional smile. "Only to ensure everything is handled smoothly for all parties." Her throat tightened. She looked at her children, the same children whose scraped knees she had patched, whose nightmares she soothed, whose dreams she supported even when her own were set aside. They wouldn't meet her eyes. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "After so long." Her daughter's voice hardened. "We're trying to help you. Please don't make this difficult." The sentence hit her like a slap. Please don't make this difficult. As if she was the problem. As if she was an obstacle, not a mother. Evelyn noticed then how they spoke over her, how they avoided sitting too close, how every word sounded rehearsed. This wasn't a family visit. This was a transaction. A betrayal dressed in formal language. She lifted the papers and scanned them despite her trembling hands. Their intentions were clear. Once signed, everything she owned, including her home, would be in their control. She would be a guest in her own life. She set the documents down slowly, carefully, almost tenderly. Then she smiled. A soft, knowing smile. "I see," she said. Her son frowned. "Mom, are you agreeing?" Evelyn folded her hands on the table, her expression calm and unreadable. "I may be old," she murmured, "but I'm not foolish." Her children shifted uncomfortably. Inside her chest, something long dormant rekindled. A quiet strength, a fire of clarity. They thought she was weak, alone, and easy to manipulate. They had no idea who they were dealing with. And she had no intention of signing anything. The house felt colder after her children left. Their voices still lingered in the air. Not warm, loving voices, but clipped, calculated ones. Evelyn stood by the dining table long after the door shut, staring at the stack of documents they had pushed toward her like a burden. Her hands no longer trembled. The shock had passed. What settled inside her now was something steadier, sharper. They thought she was weak. If only they remembered the woman who had raised them. The next morning, Evelyn dressed in her best navy blue coat. The one Arthur always said made her look like a woman who commanded storms instead of fearing them. She brushed her silver hair neatly, lifted her chin, and walked out of her home with the confidence she had forgotten she possessed. She headed straight to the office of Mr. Harlan, her old friend and family lawyer. He had been a trusted figure since Arthur's death, and one of the few people who still treated her as if her age didn't make her invisible. When she stepped inside his office, he stood from his chair with a warm smile. "Evelyn, this is a surprise. What brings you here?" She closed the door behind her and sank into the leather chair across from him. For a moment, her voice faltered, not from weakness, but from the heaviness of betrayal. My children visited me yesterday. That must have been nice, he said gently. She shook her head. They brought a lawyer. His smile faded immediately. What did they want? Evelyn handed him the documents. He read them carefully, the lines on his forehead deepening. When he finally looked up, there was anger in his eyes. They want full control of your property. This is exploitation, financial coercion. Evelyn exhaled slowly, as though releasing months of suppressed hurt. I knew it, she whispered. I could see it in their faces. They didn't come to see me. They came for what I have. Mr. Harlan nodded. But they cannot take it. Not legally. Not morally. He leaned back. Do you remember the clause Arthur added to your estate plan years ago? She frowned, thinking back. The one he insisted on. Even when I said it wasn't necessary? Exactly. He opened her file and slid it across the desk. Your property can only be transferred if you willingly sign it while being certified as mentally sound. And even then, it requires a secondary witness of your choosing, not theirs. Evelyn stared at the document, her heart swelling. She felt Arthur's presence in that moment. Quiet, steady, protective. Even after all these years, he was still defending her. I want to make changes, she said firmly. To my will. To everything. Mr. Harlan nodded as if he had expected that. Tell me what you want. Evelyn took a deep breath. I want everything removed from their reach. Everything. My home, my savings, my belongings. If they see me as nothing more than an inconvenience, then they won't benefit from the life I built. What would you like to do with your estate? I want it to go to people who would never abandon me. People who stood by me when I had nothing to offer them but kindness. She smiled softly. There's Mrs. Turner down the road. She brings me soup every winter. The community library Arthur loved so much. And she hesitated. A trust fund for children who don't have anyone. Mr. Harlan wrote every word carefully. And your children? They get nothing, Evelyn said quietly. Just the memory of what they threw away. As he finalized the paperwork, Evelyn felt a strength she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't anger driving her. No, anger burned too quickly. This was clarity. A calm, dignified reclaiming of her life. Before leaving, she stopped at the door. One more thing, Harold. Yes. I want you present when I speak to them again. He nodded. Of course. Walking back home, Evelyn felt lighter. Purpose filled her steps. Her children had underestimated her, believing her age made her powerless. But she was still Evelyn Winters. A mother. A survivor. And now, a woman prepared to teach her children the lesson they never expected. They had taken her love for granted. Now they would learn what happened when they tried to take her home. The day arrived quietly, almost innocently, like any other Saturday. Evelyn tidied her home with meticulous care, arranging fresh flowers and placing her favorite tea in delicate china cups. She moved slowly but purposefully, each motion a quiet assertion of ownership over the space that was hers alone. She had waited years for this moment, though she didn't let anyone see it. Not her children. Not even the lawyer they had brought last time. When the doorbell rang, she felt the familiar flutter of expectation. But this time, it was tempered by control. She opened the door to see her daughter and son standing stiffly on the porch, the same expressions of polite entitlement on their faces. But behind them, Evelyn noticed hesitation, almost fear. They didn't know what awaited them inside. Mom, her daughter said, forcing warmth into her voice. We came to talk. Of course, Evelyn replied, smiling gently. Please sit down. She gestured to the living room where the sun streamed across the polished floorboards, catching dust motes in the air like tiny sparks. They obeyed, sitting on opposite ends of the couch, the lawyer's briefcase clutched tightly on his lap. Evelyn poured tea, set it before them with calm precision, and finally sat down herself, hands folded neatly in her lap. Before we start, she said softly, I'd like to introduce someone. The lawyer at the door stiffened as Mr. Harlan walked in, carrying a leather folder. Evelyn's children blinked, surprise evident on their faces. Mr. Harlan? What? Her son stammered. Good afternoon, Mr. Harlan said warmly. placing the folder on the coffee table. Evelyn has informed me of the situation. Evelyn nodded, her silver hair catching the sunlight. I believe it's time we spoke honestly. All of us. She let the silence hang for a moment, allowing her children to feel the weight of it. Then she spoke. You came here thinking you could take my home. Thinking that age would make me weak, dependent, and easily manipulated. You brought a lawyer, papers, and demands. But I am 75, yes, but I am not foolish. And I am not powerless. Her daughter's hands clenched in her lap. Her son's jaw tightened. The room felt smaller, colder. Arthur, my late husband, made sure this house could never be claimed by coercion, Evelyn continued. She gestured to Mr. Harlan. I am of sound mind, fully capable of making my own decisions. And as of today, I have legally secured this home and my estate from anyone who would exploit me. The lawyer they had brought shifted uncomfortably. And my clients, they didn't know, he began. They knew, Evelyn said, her voice calm but unyielding. They knew perfectly well. She looked at her children, her gaze steady. You did not come to see me. You came for my home. And for that, you will benefit nothing. Mr. Harlan opened the folder and laid out the documents. The amended will, the protective clauses, the trust she had established for her community and for children without families. Her children read in disbelief, their entitlement crumbling into panic. Mom, this isn't fair, her son whispered. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. Fair, she said, voice rising softly with the memory of every day they ignored her, every birthday missed, every phone call unanswered. Do you know what fair is? Fair is respect. Fair is love. You had neither for me, and yet you expected to claim everything I built. You will leave here with only the memory of your actions, and I will continue my life in peace. Her daughter's face turned pale. Her son sat frozen, unable to speak. Evelyn stood, letting her height, her age, and her dignity fill the room. She walked to the door and opened it wide. Goodbye, she said. I hope one day you understand the cost of betrayal. They walked out, silent, defeated. The lawyer followed, casting a final, uncomfortable glance at Evelyn. Mr. Harlan closed the door gently behind them. Evelyn leaned against it for a moment, inhaling the quiet victory. She felt the sunlight warm her face and the familiar creak of her floorboards beneath her feet. Her home was hers. Her dignity was hers. Her life was hers, and no one could take that from her. For the first time in a long while, Evelyn felt fully alive. She smiled, poured herself a cup of tea, and sat by the window. Outside, the sparrows chirped as if celebrating with her. After all those years of waiting, of hoping, of being betrayed, she was finally free, and stronger than ever.